is Katerina from the Evolution of Stitch, and in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how to crochet this beautiful shawl. Its pattern is a combination of puff stitches and Solomon's knots. As you can see, we can say that there are columns of puff stitches and Solomon's knots which run vertically along this shawl. So let's go. For this tutorial I am going to use this acrylic yarn and has hook size 3. Of course you can use any yarn you like, but I will suggest to use a luxurious yarn because this pattern looks better if you use thin and luxurious yarns, like yarns with metallic elements. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to crochet 6 chains. If you are familiar with how we create a magic circle, then you can use a magic circle instead of the chains, because what I'm going to do now, I have crocheted 6 chains. I'm going to turn these chains into a circle by inserting my hook here and yarn over, pull through and pull through both loops. So I have created this circle by joining my chains. Instead of this circle, you can create a magic circle, and there is a tutorial on how to do it. Now what I need to do is to chain 1, and now I'm going to create puff stitches. If you don't know how to create puff stitches, there is a video tutorial on how we do it. The first thing I will do is to pull up a loop on my hook in order to have the height I need for my puff stitch, and then I'm going to yarn over, insert the hook into the circle and pull up a loop 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So now I have a lot of loops on my hook. If you would like to know how many you can count, I have 11 loops on my hook, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stretch them all in order to have the same height, yarn over, pull through all of them, yarn over and pull through this loop in order to secure my puff stitch. In this way I have created my first puff stitch. If you would like it to be puffier, let's say, you can always add more loops, insert your hook more times into the circle. And now I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3 chains, and I am going to create my next puff stitch in the same way. Yarn over, insert the hook 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Please just make sure that you have the same number of loops on your hook every time. So now yarn over, pull through all of them, yarn over and pull through this loop, and in this way I have created my second puff stitch. So now again I'm going to chain 3 and I'm going to create another puff stitch. I'm going to create 2 more puff stitches, so I should have 4 puff stitches in total. So please crochet 2 more puff stitches and I will meet you then. So I have finished my 4 puff stitches. I'm ready to begin crocheting my second round. What I am going to do is turn my work and crochet a slip stitch into this first gap. So yarn over and pull through the loop. And now I'm ready to create a puff stitch into this gap. So pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So I have all these loops on the hook. I sometimes check the number of the loops just to be sure, and I secure my puff stitch. So I have created my first puff stitch of the second round. And here again I'm going to crochet 3 chains and create another puff stitch into the very same gap. As you can imagine, this is going to be the edge of the shawl. So yarn over, insert the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I have all the loops I need on my hook, yarn over and pull through all of these loops, and yarn over and pull through this one as well. So I have created 2 puff stitches into the same gap. Now what I need to do is to create one more puff stitch, but this time this puff stitch will be on this puff stitch that I have just created, because this will add height to the shawl. So now I'm going to pull up a loop again and yarn over, insert the hook here, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So I have all the loops I need on my hook. As I said, you don't need to insert your hook 5 times. You need to do it according to your personal preference. Just be consistent. You should always insert your hook the same times in every puff stitch. So now again, yarn over, pull through all loops, yarn over and secure my puff stitch. And now I'm going to crochet something different. I am going to crochet a Solomon's knot. If you don't know how to crochet the Solomon's knot, please watch my tutorial on how to crochet a Solomon's knot shawl. So what I do is that I pull up a loop on my hook, yarn over, pull through this loop, and now I have 3 loops, and now I'm going to insert my hook between the 2 and the single loop like this, and yarn over and pull through. I have created a Solomon's knot. So here I have my puff stitch, 3 chains and another puff stitch. What I'm going to do is to insert my hook here into this second puff stitch here and crochet a single crochet stitch. So yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through both loops. And here I am going to create a new puff stitch in the same way. So I'll pull up a loop, yarn over, insert the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Yarn over, pull through all loops, yarn over and pull through these loops. So I have created a puff stitch. And now I will create another Solomon's knot. A good idea is to place your thumb here, because this helps you to support your crochet project. Pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through. Now you have 3 loops and you insert your hook between the first 2 and the single one, and in this way we have created a Solomon's knot. This is going to be the edge of the shawl. So here we are going to crochet 2 puff stitches with 3 chains in between. These chains will create the gap we will need for our next puff stitches of the edge. So yarn over, insert the hook into the gap for the first time, pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I stretch up all my loops to be the same height, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through, and I have created my first puff stitch of the edge. So now 1, 2, 3 chains, yarn over, insert the hook, pull up a loop, 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. Stretch up your loops. So yarn over and pull through all the loops to secure it. And now I am going to turn my work to the left. It doesn't matter which way your working yarn is. It can be here or it can be here. It's the same. Now I am going to insert my hook here, yarn over, pull through, and pull through the loops in order to create a slip stitch. And I'm ready to crochet my first puff stitch of this row. So I pull up my loop, yarn over, insert the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4 times, yarn over, pull through all of them, all the loops, yarn over and pull through this one loop in order to secure my puff stitch. And because now I'm crocheting the edge of the shawl, I am going to chain 3 and create a new puff stitch. You always crochet 1 puff stitch, 3 chains, and another puff stitch at the corners of the shawl. So again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, stretch my loops, yarn over and pull through all of them, yarn over and pull through. And this is the edge of the shawl. Now what I need to do is to add height to my crochet project so as to create the next row. In order to do that, I will crochet a new puff stitch on top of this second puff stitch. So I pull up a loop, yarn over, insert the hook here on this loop on top of the puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and then stretch my loops, yarn over, pull through, and yarn over and pull through. So I have created one new puff stitch, and now I am going to create a new Solomon's knot. So pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through this loop. Now I have 3 loops. I am going to insert my hook between the first 2 and the single one, like this, yarn over and pull through, and I secure with a slip stitch. And now what I need to do is to skip this, because by crocheting a puff stitch on top of this one and my Solomon's knot, I have the width I need to go to this puff stitch. And what I'm going to do is insert my hook here, yarn over and pull through. Now I have 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and create a single crochet stitch. And here on top of this puff stitch, I am going to create a new puff stitch. So pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, like this, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through, and I have created another puff stitch. Next I am going to create a Solomon's knot. So pull up the loop, yarn over and pull through this loop, insert my hook here, yarn over and pull through. So yarn over and pull through both loops. So I have created another Solomon's knot, and I'm going to skip this Solomon's knot of the previous row, and I'm going to insert my hook here on top of this puff stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops, and in this way I have created a single crochet, and I am going to crochet one more puff stitch. In the same way, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Always please make sure that you insert your hook the same number of times. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through. And I have created one puff stitch. And now a new Solomon's knot like this, and I am going to crochet my pair of puff stitches with the 3 chains in between here, because here is the edge of the shawl. So yarn over, insert 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and pull through all the loops. Yarn over and pull through this loop, and 3 chains, and again insert the hook to create my puff stitch. I always stretch my loops. And now, as you can see, my pattern has started taking its shape. I have this pair of puff stitches with the 3 chains gap between them, which is going to be around the shawl, and in between my pattern is a combination of Solomon's knots and puff stitches. So let's move on to our next row. My next row will be the same, so I turn, I insert my hook here, I create a slip stitch, and now I'm ready to create my first puff stitch. I pull up a loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, stretch my loops, yarn over, pull through all of them, and yarn over and secure them. 1, 2, 3 chains, insert my hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, yarn over and pull through all of them, yarn over and pull through this one loop. And now, in order to increase the width of the shawl and the length, what I do is to create a new puff stitch on this second puff stitch. So I pull up a loop and insert my hook, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in total. So yarn over and pull through all of them. So I have created this new puff stitch, a new Solomon's knot, which will give me the length I need in order to get to this puff stitch. On this puff stitch I will insert my hook, I will crochet a single crochet stitch, and I will create a new puff stitch. I pull up the loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and a new puff stitch here, and now I am at the Solomon's knot of the previous row. A new Solomon, I skip the Solomon and I go to the puff stitch of the previous row. I insert my hook, I crochet a single crochet stitch, and I create a new puff stitch. So I pull up the loop and I insert my hook 5 times to create a puff stitch like this. A Solomon's knot again, and skipping the Solomon's knot of the previous row, I insert my hook into the puff stitch, I create a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch. I pull up the loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, yarn over and pull through and secure my puff stitch. So I have finished one more puff stitch. A Solomon's knot, and here I'm at the end of the row where I should create this one puff stitch, 3 chains and another puff stitch. So yarn over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and now all through them, 1, 2, 3 chains, and again a puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So let me pull through all of them. Again, I have finished this row and we continue in the same way. I'll turn, I'll insert my hook and crochet slip stitch. I will pull up a loop and create a puff stitch. I will yarn over and pull through all loops, secure it, 1, 2, 3 chains, yarn over, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, yarn over, pull through all of them and yarn over and secure my puff stitch. And here on this second puff stitch I need to crochet a new puff stitch. So I pull up the loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times and create my puff stitch like this. A new Solomon's knot. I skip the Solomon's knot of the previous row. I insert my hook into this puff stitch of the previous row. I crochet a single crochet stitch and I will crochet a new puff stitch. I secure my puff stitch. I create a Solomon's knot, which will give me the width I need in order to get to the next puff stitch. I insert my hook on top of it. I crochet a single crochet stitch and I pull up a loop in order to create my puff stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, yarn over, pull through and secure my puff stitch. Again, I am going to skip the next Solomon's knot. I will create a new Solomon's knot. Otherwise, I won't be able to get to this puff stitch. I'll insert my hook into the puff stitch. I will crochet a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch. And now again I am going to create a Solomon's knot and go to the next puff stitch here, like this. Once again a new puff stitch, and a new Solomon's knot, and then I will be at the edge of the shawl. So we'll end up with a puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, and 3 chains and 1 more puff stitch. Like this. So I have finished 1 more row and I will continue in this way. I will turn, I will insert my hook here and crochet a slip stitch, and I pull up the loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through to secure, 1, 2, 3, a new puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yarn over and pull through all loops, and a new puff stitch on top of this second puff stitch. And now this is the pattern. I pull up a loop, I insert my hook for 5 times. Now I think I have 5 times, I don't remember. So now I have inserted my hook 5 times. I pull through all the loops, and now I create a Solomon's knot. And I will go to the next puff stitch here. I will crochet a single crochet stitch and I will create a new puff stitch. I pull up the loop, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times in total, a new Solomon's knot to get me to the next puff stitch. So here I insert my hook and a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch, and this is all there is to it. I have 1 more puff stitch, a new Solomon's knot. So you will always create a puff stitch on top of a puff stitch and skip the Solomon's knot by creating a new Solomon's knot. Here again, a single crochet stitch, pull up a loop, a new puff stitch, so now what we have to do, we have to create a Solomon's knot and get to the next puff stitch, like here, a single crochet stitch here and a new puff stitch. Here I have finished my puff stitch. I crochet a Solomon's knot like this, because I need to get to the edge of my shawl. And create one puff stitch, 3 chains, and another puff stitch. So my first puff stitch, 1, 2, 3, I mean my first puff stitch of the edge of the shawl, and the second puff stitch. Again, I turn, I insert my hook into the first gap and create a slip stitch, and I start by crocheting a puff stitch. Let me check the number of the loops. So, like this, 1, 2, 3 chains, and another puff stitch. On top of this second puff stitch, I always create a new puff stitch. So I pull up the loop, I create my puff stitch and then a Solomon's knot. I go to the next puff stitch, I crochet a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch. Again, a Solomon's knot, and I skip the Solomon knot of the previous row, and here on the puff stitch a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch. A Solomon's knot, and on the next puff stitch a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch, and this is it. It's very easy as long as you know how to crochet the Solomon's knot and the puff stitch. There are tutorials for both of these stitches. Again, I will create a Solomon's knot. I will get to the next puff stitch here. I will create a new puff stitch on top of the puff stitch. Like this, a Solomon's knot, here, a single crochet stitch and a new puff stitch. a Solomon's knot, and a puff stitch here again. So pull up the loop, like this, finish my puff stitch, a Solomon's knot, and I have reached the edge of the shawl. So here I am going to crochet one puff stitch, 3 chains, one puff stitch. We always end up in the same way. Like this, 1, 2, 3, and a new puff stitch. So let me crochet some rows without talking, just for you to see how this shawl progresses. I insert my hook into this space and crochet slip stitch. So just watch. Now I'm at the edge, so a new puff stitch on top. So this is the way we crochet this beautiful shawl. It's a very beautiful shawl, especially for summer evenings if you use thin yarn. A lot of people have asked me to show how to crochet the latkans, I think they are called, or tassels, which I used in order to create the decoration of the shawl. My next tutorial will be on these latkans because they fit perfectly on this shawl. So please subscribe to my channel, and if you liked my tutorial, please leave a thumbs up. It will help me grow my channel. Thanks for watching. Always think positive.